Today is the final day of Crestcom's Reimagine Your Tomorrow series. And wow, what a great ride it has been. We opened up on Tuesday talking all about our vision. Our vision, what is our new tomorrow going to look like? With Stephen Shapiro talking about innovation and Kathleen Quinn Vota talking about talent management. And of course, Shep Hyken with customer service. And then we went into yesterday talking about influence, because if we want that vision, we have to be able to influence those to be able to make it happen so we can create our success. And so yesterday it was such an amazing day. We heard from Andy Bounds all about the big four and thinking about where and how we can be more influential in our communications. And Colleen Stanley talking about EQ and IQ. And if you want to make something happen, it's got to start with you. And then, of course, we wrapped up with a very important message that I think we all need to hear. And it's that love is just damn good business with Steve Barber. Now, today, on our final part of the series, we're talking all about execution. What are we going to do to make it happen? We have the vision, we understand how to influence, but now we need to make sure it happens. And typically, what you see with execution is that the main reason that it can fail is that there aren't clear choices. And so our experts today are going to help you understand the choices that you need to make to be able to execute your strategy, to make sure people understand what is expected of them. Because 67% of well-formulated strategies fail due to poor execution. 67%. That is such a high number, and that's according to Harvard Business Review. So they fail because of poor execution, which is what we're going to be talking about today, how we can motivate our people, how we can adjust our mindset, and how we can lead our path forward. Because you can't act like this. It can't be thinking, well, what if we don't change at all? And something magical just happens. I mean, yes, my friends, I totally wish that that could happen, but it's not likely. We don't necessarily have the magic. We need to be intentional with our strategies. They need to be well thought out. We need to think about what steps need to be taken to be able to execute. Because if you don't put anything in place, you cannot expect miraculous results to appear. The time is now to put and take new action, put new things in place so you can achieve different results. Now, before we get into it, just a reminder that this webinar is featured in closed captioning via Streamer. To access the closed captioning, you'll go to www.streamer.center. Again, that's www.streamer.center. Once you're at streamer.center, you'll go to the upper right-hand corner and you'll click Login. There, the closed captioning is offered in 4 different languages: in German, French, Dutch, and Spanish. You can enter your username and password, but just be mindful that this is case sensitive. This will also be sent in the chat box, so if you wanted to take a look there, or you could take a picture to just have this for future notice. All right, so for those that haven't been on our series so far, my name is Jen DeWall, and I am a leadership development strategist and facilitator for Crestcom. I, like many of my counterparts in the Crestcom world, just love my job because it's all about how we can transform the leaders of today so that they can make a greater impact, not only in their organizations or with their teams, but for the communities that they live and serve. And for those that are unfamiliar with Crestcom, I know we have a lot of alumni, and we are so happy to have you on with us because we know that you found value in our program and we believe in it so much. Because at Crestcom, our goal is to develop managers into leaders so they can solve those organizational challenges that really create stress, headache, and obviously impact our overall performance. We give leaders the tools that they need to succeed so they can reduce turnover, improve engagement, communicate more effectively, just like how Andy Bounds was talking about yesterday, thinking about how we can influence, negotiate for better outcomes, innovate so we can update or change the way that we're looking at our processes, and of course, get results. Our goal is to provide leaders the tools that they need to succeed. And we are an international leadership development organization who operates in over 60 countries. And you know, I've said this before, one of the things that I love is that leadership transcends cultural borders. That no matter if we're located in Nigeria or Belgium, we are likely struggling with the same challenges. And I'm sure that many of us, as we're thinking about what the next path forward, can likely find solace and connection and just sharing these insights, sharing the struggle, and just leaning on each other to help us design that next path forward. So we're talking about part 3 right now, execute for results. Execute for results. We want to make it happen. We have the vision. We understand how to influence people. Now we've got to make it happen. Because if you don't change direction, you may end up where you're going. And right now, for some of you, you might be feeling overwhelmed. You might be feeling a little bit conflicted or uncertain about the future. The one thing that we know right now is that we have to take action to be able to sustain our business operations. And today you're going to hear from some amazing experts all about how we can execute for results. You'll hear first from Simon Bailey, who is an expert in transformational leadership, talking about how we can transform our businesses, our leaders, the way that we do customer service. Then we'll go into Marilyn Sherman, who's going to talk all about how you can adjust your mindset, which is what we are going to need to build that path forward. She is an expert in all about how we can create our seat for success in front row leadership. And we're going to wrap up with Mark Sanborn, a leadership potential and customer service expert who is going to help guide you down that path of how you need to lead people through this crisis and into that new or next step forward. So now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the amazing Simon Bailey. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Simon, you are in for a treat. Not only is he super high energy, I love his laugh, but he is a breakthrough strategist, a keynote speaker, an innovator, and an author. And he is just going to wow you with how you can motivate your team. Simon, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you. But on behalf of Crestcom, thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's so good to be with you. In times of change, the job of a leader is to invite men and women on a journey to discover the leader within themselves while they're following you. The job of a leader during this time is to understand that connectedness is the new currency. And transformational leaders who intend to execute understand the first thing they have to do is to be human. When I say be human, I connect to where people are by acknowledging the emotion that everyone has experienced thus far. I activate kindness to really comprehend and let them know that we just don't see you as a human doing, but we see you as a human being. Activating kindness is recognizing that there are those who have been working remotely and may not want to come to a physical office, but a leader, he or she has the ability to discern how to connect with that person, to meet them where they are, and to build a bridge on where we can go together. Men and women who intend to lead in the next normal understand that it's not about me, but it's about we. And when I make it about we, I'm constantly looking for the opportunity to serve you, because serving is the new selling. And when leaders come from that disposition of connecting and serving, there's an emotional connection, an emotional bond. In other words, we discover that trust is the glue of all relationships in the midst of disruption. So my question for you, Socratic method of learning, if I intend to execute, what am I doing to connect? And what can I do to look for ways to exceed expectation and really ensure that people know that they matter. Now, the question that I've received over the last few weeks from leaders all over the world, Simon, how do we not only execute, but how do we become transformational leaders who, in this time, show up in a fresh way? And the thing that I am telling leaders to really think about is to let people know how you are there for them. When I say being there for them, it's coming alongside to say, we are here to make sure that you get what you need from us. When customers hear that, it takes the relationship to another level. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine here in Orlando, Florida, where I live, Orlando, Florida, USA, he and I used to work together at Disney. And he called me up. He has a catering company, about 100 staff people that have had to be furloughed within the last few weeks. And he said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to shift our business model and we are going to deliver family meals in home. So they made the quick shift, and for a family of four, $75 per family, they can get a beautiful gourmet meal that is packaged, delivered to their home. It just needs to be warmed up. And he said, we're going to take it a step further. And all of the employees that we had to furlough, we're going to take a percentage of the sales and we're going to make it available to them to let them know that we care about them. That's a leader that gets it, that says, wait a minute, what can I do to be a solution to men and women that may have food insecurity? But to take it a step further, connectedness is the new currency. Building on that, what I really believe leaders have to embrace right now, fortitude is the new attitude. When a person has fortitude, and let me define this, fortitude is a person that has strength of mind, that as they are experiencing adversity, they're experiencing it with courage. Fortitude, which comes from the word fortis or fortify, is the ability to press through when it's not convenient. The person with fortitude can stand up and say, I will try a little harder tomorrow. Fortitude is not in the roar. Fortitude is in the understanding that if I'm going to execute on results, I may have to do what is uncomfortable and inconvenient, but it's the right thing to do. How many of you, and you can put this in the chat, how many of you saw the movie 300? Saw the movie 300, all right? If you saw the movie 300, then it's a great movie. It's a fantastic movie. And you remember that King Leonidas of Sparta, the Spartans, they were able to have what I would call that fortitude, right? Where they believed that they could take on whatever was happening, right? And they did it. How many of you, and you can put this in the chat, saw Wonder Woman, all right? And I want to see some of my guys saying, yes, they saw Wonder Woman. Very good, Robert, that's good. Martin, good. Christopher, Scott, James, Ricardo, Kevin, that's right. Thomas, you saw Wonder Woman. All right, Wonder Woman is a great example of fortitude. How many of you, one more movie reference, how many of you saw Hunger Games? Saw the Hunger Games, all right? All right, yes. So Jennifer Lawrence in the Hunger Games, another example of fortitude. Fortitude is the ability to say, how do I have the courage to continue to build the business, to continue to build relationships, to continue to persevere no matter what. Because inside of fortitude, you discover that hope is a superpower. And when I say hope is a superpower, the person that has fortitude velcros themselves to the future. And as they velcro themselves to the future, the fortitude pulls them forward because they are looking through the windshield of the opportunity instead of the rear view mirror as to what just happened. So, a leader who understands that their job is to invite people on a journey to discover the leader within themselves while they're following you. So the question becomes, oh, brilliant one. That's right. I called you, oh, brilliant one. And you can put in the chat, yes, that's me. I'm brilliant. I'm brilliant. Your job right now, if you're going to execute on results, is to say, how connected am I? Am I being human? Am I coming from a place of authentic listening instead of selective hearing? Am I understanding that serving is the new selling, and it's not about what we get, but what we become in the process? So here's the third takeaway, and then I want to open up for questions that you may have, because I believe that the greatest gift that I can give you is to answer your questions. And I'm so glad y'all put me first, because by the time you hear Mark Sanborn and Marilyn Sherman and Steven Shapiro, these are people that I look up to. I'm just glad that they allowed me to be in the room with them, and they put me first, because greatness is coming after me. When you hear Marilyn and Mark and Steven, they are some of the most brilliant people that I know. So when you think about connectedness is the new currency, fortitude is the new attitude, how do we recognize this moment and look at performance reviews through a fresh lens and say, what if we focus on ensuring that people have authentic, healthy well-being? The World Health Organization, in their latest research, says that as a result of COVID-19, that $1 trillion of productivity will impact organizations because people have high anxiety, fear, worry, not sure where things are going to be. And because of this uncertainty, it impacts productivity. And so my question, Socratic method of learning, how are you doing? How are you doing? Because leadership is caught and taught. And if you want to motivate people, we have to be in a good place where we are mentally healthy, that we have the mindset, the skill set, the will set to show up and to let people know that we will get through this together. And when we focus on well-being, mental health, here's my recommendation. What would it be like for you to ensure that you're investing in a professional who is perhaps a psychologist, psychiatrist, someone that can help people navigate during this time to make sure they're in the right headspace? Because you can talk executing results all day long, but if people are jacked up in their mind and they're like, I don't know if I'm going to have a job tomorrow, or how am I going to feed my family because they have food insecurity, or they're worried about paying their bills. And let me give you the research. Dr. Krista Mirsku at Princeton University says that when the brain is worried, and that's awesome, Nadine. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. When the brain is worried, the brain slows down. When the brain slows down, it doesn't create neurogenesis, which is the process of growing neurons, which grows the brain. So if the brain slows down because of worry, fear, and stress, right? It impacts productivity. So the question becomes, what is the Control Alt Delete button that deletes from the mind drive and the heart drive those things that slow down the human operating system? And I believe it is a man or woman like yourself that has the ability to upgrade their verbal software and to tell people, number one, you matter. Number two, I see you and I value who you are and I appreciate the difference that you make. And number three, help me help you to be the best version of yourself as we take care of our customers. And what you will discover, last thing I will say, and then we'll open up for questions. Your entire business will move from customer service to customer love. Everything that I learned at Disney that I took away from my Disney experience is that customer service is a department, but customer love is a mindset. And you're going to hear from Shep Hyken. Shep, who I have tremendous respect for, someone that I look up to. I'm just starting out, you know, I'm just trying to figure it out and everything. I'm new in this game, so I appreciate y'all accepting me. Customer love is how results matter and stick, because customer love is how do we hug people with our words and let them know that they matter. So with that said, Jen, I want to open up for any questions that people have. Oh, so they're asking me in the chat, customer service is a department, but customer love is a mindset. And so so Jen, you want to throw some questions my way?
Yeah, I've got some questions for you. First off, can you repeat your 3 points?
Yes.
Just the 3 bullet points for them.
Connectivity is the new currency. Fortitude is the new attitude. And customer love is the point of differentiation. And I kind of put a lot around that, but customer love is the point of differentiation.
Yeah, that's how people know whether or not they want to buy from us based on what they hear from their friends and whether or not you're a good provider. Have been so many great questions. We've got one. How do you consider different styles, like the extrovert versus the introvert, and different cultures in a message? How can you account for that diversity?
Yeah, great question. Well, first of all, I know that many of you are from all over the world and you have different cultures and customs, and we honor that. I would simply invite all of us to consider using emotional intelligence like all of us have, and understanding customs and traditions. And in emotional intelligence, also dive into intuitively, how can I best serve this moment? What is the most appropriate way for me to approach this situation? Because it's all about the approach, right? And if you approach a person through the lens of how they're wired, you don't have to ask them to do business with you. They will honor you and want to do business because you've approached them from the right way.
Awesome. All right, another question here. Some organizations and some individuals believe that coaching is the greatest method to get the most out of your staff and transform them. What's your take on that?
I think it's just one. There are many different approaches to developing individuals, coaching being one of them, mentorship being another, doing job shadowing being another, working with a leader in a different area is another, working on a special project or assignment. So there's a cornucopia of approaches to how a person can be developed. Coaching is just one of those lanes and one of those avenues.
Awesome. I've got a personal question. You talked quickly about mindset, skill set, and will set. I love those 3 together. What does that mean? So having the right mindset, then making sure you have the skills. Can you elaborate on that one? Because I think that's a really great way to think about our next step forward.
So, mindset, or if I was to say mindfulness, is the ability to meditate and slow down and be mindful of wherever I'm at, just to kind of connect. So, I'm mindful of my thoughts because my thoughts become words, my words become action. So, when I'm mindful or I have the mindset, I'm constantly aware as to how am I doing. Then I have the skill set. So LinkedIn has just come out with their research globally of the top 5 skills that will be needed for the workforce of the future, just released a few days ago. Skill number 1, creativity. So I have to ask myself the question, am I creative? Skill number 2, persuasion. Skill number 3, collaboration. Skill number 4, adaptability. Skill number 5, emotional intelligence. So when I think about mindset, I then have to look at my skill set, because my skill set is my point of differentiation. And then my will set is the fortitude. It's what some of my friends may call your chutzpah, your fire in your belly to push through and to make it happen.
Awesome. I loved that. And even how you could recite those top 5 from LinkedIn. Okay, we've got so many questions coming in. Let's see. How do you deal with a resistant person or even a difficult or resistant customer on your team? Like, how do you deal with how do you deal with difficult people? Because that is the struggle, right? That's the point of frustration we get as leaders. So how in the heck do we deal with these difficult people?
All right, whoever asked that question, I'm going to give you an answer, and this answer is for you and everyone listening to us. Take out a sheet of paper, and that person who is difficult, I want you to write down, and we're not going to do it now, you can do this later, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I want you to write down what makes that person brilliant. And I know this is like irking the fire out of you. This is like the fingernails on the chalkboard, but just go with it. Write down everything that is right about that person, okay? Now, in 30 seconds or less. Now, here's the deal, and here's the net takeaway. It's not going to change that person because you wrote it down, but it's going to change how you talk to them. Because if language is the software of the mind, we have to begin to communicate to people who are difficult and resistant through a different lens by seeing them through the lens of brilliance. And because language has energy embedded in it, when I begin to talk to that person, I'm speaking up to them instead of down to them. And I'm inviting them to a higher viewing point of how I see them. Now, that's one way. Let's go the opposite way. The next time you have that resistant client that is irking the fire out of you and getting on your last good nerve, I want you to say, so Jen, here's what I heard you say about this. Should I be thinking about you in this particular manner? And you ask it in a form of a question, because you never attack a person, but you invite them, Socratic method of learning, to learn through the question. And Jen would say, oh my goodness, no, I don't want you to see me that way. And hopefully they've now had the epiphany as to what they are giving off when they're resistant.
Gosh, you are just slaying with knowledge here. I asked for one, there's one repeat for the 5 that you listed in terms of the desired skills. I know emotional, well, I'll let you repeat that. And then I've got another question on deck for you.
So emotional intelligence, number 5, adaptability, number 4, collaboration, number 3, persuasion, number 2, creativity, number 1.
Awesome. And by the way, if you haven't thought about it, people would like a daily dose of Simon, or they want you to create a daily meditation. So just saying, future business opportunities could come
Actually, I
out as a
do.
result of this.
I do. I do a daily update, a daily video on LinkedIn every day, or on Instagram and IGTV. We do it every day, 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Okay, see, there you go. All we had to do was ask.
Yeah.
So another question, this one's a little bit more about customer service. How in these difficult times do we show love, show support to our customers without coming across as insincere or maybe even insensitive?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, Dan Burris, a friend, made a very powerful statement. Do you want to be a successful company or a significant company? So, for example, Ford Motor Company here in the United States hasn't been able to build cars over the last 8 weeks. So, what do? They shift and they're now building ventilators. Ford is now seen as a significant company instead of a successful company. So show your customer how you intend to be significant for them. Take, for instance, a dry cleaners, which is another example that Dan used. A dry cleaners who they're not drying clothes because people are sheltering in place, quarantine. So the dry cleaners decide to become a significant dry cleaners by cleaning the clothes of first responders and healthcare workers. So if you want your clients to see you in a fresh new light and you're not just showing up with hat in hand or trying to sell, ask them, how can I serve you? Because serving is the new selling. What is it that you need? Look for that opportunity to come beside them and be significant. And listen, if they sign a contract, say you can sign now, pay later, because I am here to serve you.
Serving is the new selling. What a powerful message, all about servant-based leadership, which we know is just so important in that we need to help each other. Which leads into another thing. Someone had asked, can you elaborate on how to connect, maybe how to connect with your employees? Or, I mean, we touched a little bit about our customers, but how do we connect with our team, especially where some of us aren't even face-to-face right now?
Yeah. So a great way to connect with individuals, I did a course not too long ago for LinkedIn Learning on building business relationships. And one of the things that I teach is you have to understand if people are visual learners, auditory, or hands-on. And once you begin to understand, now how do you figure that out? You got to get into dialogue with them. And if you really want to connect, be interested, not just interesting. And how you be interested or curious is to ask questions. So for instance, Jen, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? And literally the conversation becomes like a tennis match, serve, volley, because I'm listening for where you're from so I can connect a dot. So make them the most important person in that conversation to really connect. So net, here's the last thing I'll say. Listen to understand instead of listening to respond. Because hearing is a courtesy, but listening is a compliment. That's how you connect.
Awesome. We got another question, and maybe this is kind of a difficult one. Why do you think that this is more emotional intelligence, but why do you think there's a disconnect between maybe how leaders see themselves? Like maybe they think that they are more people focused, but in actuality, they actually use their power more instead of leadership. Why do you think that is? And how can you help create an awareness, especially maybe if it's a senior leader, about that disconnect and maybe how they see themselves and how they're showing up?
So when I
I
worked
know
at
there's a lot there.
yeah, when I worked at Disney, I'll never forget the former chairman and CEO said to me that the higher you go, the less you know, because everything comes to you through filters. People tell you what they want you to hear and to blow smoke up your leg and to kiss the ring instead of you hearing the truth. So in order for leaders to really evolve or elevate, I use those words intentionally, is they need a person who can deliver truth serum to them. That person who can speak truth to power and say, here is the word on the street about you. And that leader, he or she, will not be threatened by that, but they will see it as an opportunity to grow. So receiving feedback. So number one, can leaders receive feedback? Number two, does the leader have an executive coach that can speak truth to them? And then number three, does that leader want to change? Because there are some leaders who are just set in their ways. They're more negative than an undeveloped piece of film, and they think they're right and they don't get it. They're emotionally clueless and disconnected. So though they may be producing revenue, but they leave a lot of bodies in wake. And so organizations and businesses and boards have to begin to say, do we have leaders that are in touch with what's really going on?
My gosh, there are so many questions. And I want to do a shout out because they've asked, how does this approach still work? Like, do we have to change how we show up if maybe we work in a public service or government industry? Do you see
No.
that we have to change by industry?
No, because here's the deal. If you change to become something else to fit into an organization, you're inauthentic. You're not being your authentic self. And when you are able to be your authentic self within, appropriate manner, the organization or business gets the very best of you because you don't show up with the game face on. You show up to say, how do I help this business, this team, this department move forward? So you've got to be in a culture where you're celebrated rather than tolerated. Because if you're in a culture where you're tolerated and not celebrated, you work hard enough to do a job and do just enough to keep from getting fired.
Oh my gosh, celebrated versus tolerated. I feel like I absolutely have had that experience in my career where sometimes I'm just probably there and then in others I'm more celebrated. I love that saying. I've never heard of that before. How this is a really great question right now because I know a lot of organizations are struggling this comes from Robert Becker. How do you help employees overcome the fear of uncertainty?
Wow. Robert, first of all, thank you for that question. I think I'll give you a couple of suggestions. And Marilyn and Mark, they are the experts. I'm just, a little country guy just trying to make it in the world. So I think the first thing is to address that they do have fear and acknowledge it. Acknowledge the 800-pound gorilla in the room and say, you know what, this is real. This is very real. But then invite them to reframe. So, what would be better? What would success look like? What is the situation that's causing you to fear the most or to be uncertain? And get them talking about it because sometimes people have had to suppress over these last few weeks. And here's the deal. A trauma or crisis doesn't come to break you. It comes to reveal who you are at the core. So now to have an audience where I can share, say, here's where the fear of uncertainty is coming from. And not that you're a pop psychologist or anything, but you understand when you listen to people, that becomes healing presence for them just to process. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing to help them overcome the fear and uncertainty, tell them what they're doing right. Tell them why they matter. Tell them how important they are to the business, to life, to their family. Put the mirror in front of them and reflect back to them their awesomeness. Because guess what? Somebody probably hasn't told them in a long time that they really are valuable. And if you do that, it becomes the breakthrough for them to show up in a different way. Little by little, doesn't happen overnight, but it's that consistent investment that becomes a deposit into their emotional bank account. As the interest begins to accrue, they remember you as the person that made that positive deposit.
Gosh, yes. How can you make a positive deposit in one of your team members today? Oh my gosh, you're bringing tears to my eyes because that's just beautiful to think about how we can truly connect. Someone had asked a question. This came from Tracy. Can you repeat what came before listening is a compliment?
Oh, so hearing is a courtesy, listening is a compliment.
Hearing is a courtesy. And then going back, even just touching again on it was, I believe, authentic listening
Yeah,
versus,
versus selective hearing. So,
yes.
so, so one of the greatest problems that women have with men is men don't talk and they don't listen. And when men listen, we sometimes have selective hearing. I'm guilty at times.
Oh, absolutely. Another question, how would you recommend or how would you advise someone to deal with the fear that employees have about coming back to work?
Yeah, wow. I was just on a webinar before this with a group of CEOs, and here's the first thing, safety first. Assuring people, especially employees, that the organization has taken every precaution to create a safe environment for them to come back to work and literally bullet point list, outline it, put it on the internal intranet, like here is everything we have done down to the detail. And here's why. People are Googling, they are researching, and they know what should be done. And what you want to do is position your organization that has gone the extra inch, not the extra mile, extra inch to think safety first. Secondly, how is the organization communicating during this time? And when I say communicating, over communicating. Here's what we know today. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is fluid, it's moving, and you need to go with us. Here's the deal. When organizations don't communicate, people will create a story to fill the void. So if you don't want a story, create it out on the street. Give the story with no corporate speak. Don't blow smoke up people's leg, womp, 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 because people are going to tune you out because they don't want to hear corporate speak right now. They will see through that. So you want to tell them with love the truth.
Oh my gosh, yes. People want to be connected. That's how you started. It's all about being human. I'm going to ask one more question, if that's okay. Let's see, one review question and then one final question. Could you go over, if you want to engage someone, change a task to an ask again?
Okay, so if you want to engage someone, did I say it like that? Okay, I don't remember exactly what I said, so keep me honest here. But here's an attempt. If I want to engage someone, I need to understand how they're doing, being emotionally available to them, acknowledging the emotion, very real. Then the second thing, activate kindness by asking, is there anything you need? Is there any help that you need, right? And then the third thing, inviting that person to ask for help. And let me tell you why this is important. We are in an environment where men and women are, if I come back to office, I'm keeping my head down, I'm not rocking the boat, I'm not speaking up, I'm not asking for help, because I don't want my name on the guillotine of reduction in force list that the company will lay me off because they don't think that I can take on more work. So what we have to do to engage people, we have to let them know it's okay to say that you need help. Here's the last thing that's happening is people are working harder now because when people start thinking about financial security, I double down because I have to hold on to what I have. And the greatest thing that leaders can do is to say, I understand, but let's talk so we can help each other and move quicker, faster in taking care of our customers. And you're the number one customers. Employees are your number one customer, then the customers who pay you.
Oh my gosh, Simon, you have given so much great content, so many great tips that are easy to remember. I'm going to we can't actually ask another question, but I know I want to ask you offline if you can answer some of the questions we didn't get to, if you'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And tell people they can go to simontbailey.com, my website, follow us, all that great stuff. So yeah.
What would be the final thing that you would want all of our Crestcom community to hear as you go? What's the final thing you want to leave them with today?
Wow. So I'm going to say something, and because this is Crestcom, this is how we roll. And I don't know when I'm going to see you again or if we'll ever have a chance to meet. But I want to let you know I love you and I believe in you. And there's not a darn thing you can do about it. Love is not a word that's used in professional or business circles. But if this was the last presentation that I ever gave in my life, and you found out tomorrow that I had went on the other side, what were the last words that I left you with? And those words were, I love you. Or in Spanish, te quiero mucho. And in German, ich liebe du. I love you, I believe in you. And there's not a darn thing you can do about it.
Oh my gosh, Simon, I love it. I love your positivity. I love your love. I love all the tips and advice. And just thank you so much for taking time to, first and foremost, give great insight and content. But second, you took so much time with the Q&A, and I know that everyone listening really appreciated that. So thank you so much, Simon. And I'm going to be sharing again your website just on the screen, but take care of you. And thank you so much on behalf of the whole Crestcom community.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow. What a great presentation by Simon Bailey. If you want to connect with him, you can go to Simon T. Bailey. There you can actually find his most recent book that he just released, Be the Spark. Simon talks, oh my gosh, he gave us so much content. He started with being human, right? The thing that we need to do to be able to execute. And he also just connected us with thinking about fortitude is the new attitude, and serving is the new selling. Oh my gosh, there are just so many things. Or authentic listening versus selective listening. Thinking about how you can use all of those insights to really motivate your team, to connect with your customers. And now we're going to go into our next expert. This is with Marilyn Sherman. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with Marilyn, I have to flip a few slides ahead, so I apologize for that. But for those that are unfamiliar with Marilyn, she is, well, first and foremost, you are going to love all the insight that she's got to share, because it's all about how you, as a leader, can change the way that you show up so you can create a different impact, so you can have the execution that you desire. Marilyn is going to come with a lot of energy, and she's going to talk about what it means to be a front row leader. She's the founder of Front Row Leadership. She is also a Hall of Fame motivational keynote speaker, and she is an author. And we are so happy to have her with us on the seminar or the webinar today. Marilyn, I'm so looking forward to hearing how you can help leaders create their seat for success. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen right now because I want to hear from you. Marilyn, thank you so much, and take it away.
Thank you, Jen, and congratulations on a great summit. It's been really good. And what a great way to start this day or early evening for those of us who are around the world with Simon Bailey. Wasn't he amazing? Well, my time today, I'm so passionate about helping you get a front row seat in your life. And what do I mean by that? I have a way of looking at success. I've been studying success and successful teams and successful managers for 25 years. And I found that success leaves clues. And there are people, if you want to be like the successful people out there, you can find out what are they doing that works for them and then adapt it to you. And so what I have found that there are two things that are so common to take your current level of leadership success to the next level is to be acutely aware of where you sit and who you sit with. And you could take me literally or you could take me figuratively. And so here's what I mean by that. Life is a big venue, and you have choices as to where you sit in this venue of life. Balcony seats are not good seats. Balcony seats are when you're disengaged and you're not really feeling the love, like Simon talked about earlier and like the speaker talked about yesterday, Mr. Farber. You're not feeling the love, you're not feeling appreciated, and you're just sort of, it's as if you're sitting so far in the balcony that you could leave and come back and no one would ever notice that you had left. Most people are in the second category, which is general admission. General admission seats are people that find themselves in a comfort zone, and their comfort zone leads to habits, and those habits lead to settling for eventual mediocrity. And you and I can afford to live nowhere near mediocrity. This is where people say, you know, how are you? I'm okay. How you doing? I'm all right. These people have lost their passion and their drive to manage other people, to see growth in others, to see how they can contribute to the bottom line of their organization. And then there's the front row, the third category. The front row is where you get to say, it doesn't get any better than this. I love what I do. I love who I do it with. I love the team that supports me. I love being a contributing member. I love collaboration. I feel good about who I am and what I do. I feel valued for what I bring to the table. That to me is living your life in the front row. And you have choices every single day as to where you choose to sit. You can choose to sit in the balcony, you can choose to settle for meandering around in general admission, or you can choose the front row. So I'm going to share my screen right now, and I'm going to show you some slides. And if I'm talking too fast, or if I am, if you have any questions, I absolutely can take your emails or your texts and answer any of those questions, and I will stay on the chat as long as the lines are open. So here, if you want to take a screenshot of this for now, just so you know how to get a hold of me later, that would be fantastic. So I want to introduce you to the concept of the seat of success, because I told you earlier that we have choices as to where we sit in our life. And the most successful people out there, they choose to live their life in the front row. So my acronym starts with the S in seat, stands for to see the outcome you desire. I'm a huge believer in goal setting. In fact, I wrote a book specifically about goal setting and having an amazing bucket list of dreams and goals for every area of your life. So where do you see yourself? What does success look like for you? In fact, what does your front row look like to you? Because there is no judgment about what you decide to be your front row. My front row is being in front of you today. I can't believe we've got people from all over the world tuning in. This is my front row moment. I love this. For some of you, you may be a little bit trepidatious if you had to give a presentation in front of all these people. There's no judgment. We just all have different skill sets, different visions, different concepts of what success looks like for us. So if you want a seat of success, make sure you see yourself, you see the outcome, you define that outcome, you have that vision for yourself. What does it look like? So if we were to come together a year from today, and I ask you, hey, remember that vision you created for yourself a year ago? Were you able to attain it? And to know if you were able to clearly define what your vision is, you would be able to answer either yes or no. So I don't want you to create a vision where you say, oh, my vision is to be the best leader or the best manager possible, because that's not a measurable vision. If you say, I want to promote 3 people within my department into higher elevated roles of leadership, that's specific. So see the outcome you desire and make it very specific. The E in seat stands for energy focused. You only have so much energy. So in this day and age, we could be distracted in so many different areas of things that are outside of our control. So know that you have finite amount of energy. So don't waste your valuable energy that you need to manage your team and to lead your team, especially through these difficult times. Don't waste your energy on things that are completely outside of your control. And if part of your work and your responsibility is handling unexpected things that are out of your control, but you're in charge of handling it, then make sure you allocate time and energy to be able to handle it, to make sure you get enough sleep, that you're taking good care of your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, so that you have the energy to handle the day-to-day operation of this thing we call life. So with your energy, I want you to sort of shift your focus from, I have to be better at time management. I want you to focus it to, I want to be better at energy management. And the A stands for attitude, because so much of success is determined on your attitude. Do you have an attitude where people want to be around you? They want to engage in conversation with you. They want to listen to your solutions and resolutions. They want to be with you. They want to work for you. They want to take your advice. They want to take your direction. Or do you have an attitude of everything is negative, you're really sarcastic, no one ever has a good idea? There are some people that are so negative that they brighten up a room just by leaving it. And I don't want to be that kind of person, and I don't want you to be that kind of person. And the nice thing about the A in seat, your attitude is 100% within your control. It doesn't depend on the economy. It doesn't depend on a pandemic. It doesn't depend on what's going on with other people, because you have a choice as to what kind of attitude you're going to have today. And the best way to consistently show up with a positive attitude is to find ways to be grateful for all the things that you have. Be grateful for the home that you have, the roof over your head, the clean drinking water that you have all your limbs, if that's the case. Be grateful for those things, because when you have a sense of gratitude, you're less likely to complain incessantly about things that are out of your control. And the T in SEAT stands for tenacity. Tenacity, it's about overcoming the obstacles that appear in our life. Because even though I'm a motivational speaker, I'm also a realist. There are things that will happen. There will be obstacles. There will be detours along your path to the front row. The tenacity part is to hang in there, to find out, okay, someone else has had this issue before. Let me go find out how they dealt with it. Having tenacity means not to give up, but to persevere through that obstacle so you can see the other side. Every single biography I've read or autobiography I've read of successful and famous people, every single one of them has had some sort of obstacle that they had to overcome. So you and I are not alone when we're faced with these obstacles. One of my mentors, Dr. Nita Quabain, said, it's okay to be disappointed, but it's not okay to be discouraged. So if you have an obstacle that you didn't expect and you're feeling a little frustrated because you have a goal and you have a vision and you have your bucket list, but something is holding you back, it's okay to be disappointed that you haven't achieved that goal yet, but it's not okay to be discouraged. And the difference between the two is discouragement is almost as if you're giving up and you have no more hope. And I always believe there is hope. There is hope for a better day. There is hope for a better way. There is hope that there will be light at the end of the dark tunnel. So yeah, I want you to recognize the seed of success. But here's some practical information that I learned a long time ago from Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote a famous book called On Death and Dying, and it's about handling grief. And here's what's so interesting about what's happening today is that the same issues, these same stages that one would go through dealing with a loss are the same stages we go through, not the loss of a loved one, but the loss of normalcy, the loss of routine, the loss of this is the way we used to do things. So I want to run through these 5 stages so that you can understand what your team may be going through right now, especially during this slow re-entry into a new normal. I call it back to the new future because we're not going back to normal. There's no going back. We're going back to a new future. So the first one is denial. Denial, there are still people out there that are saying, why are we shutting off the world economy for something that's basically the flu? In fact, I'm broadcasting live today from Las Vegas, Nevada, and there was a viral video that just went nationwide, maybe worldwide yesterday at one of our stores, Costco, where the customer refused to wear a mask and the Costco employee said, we cannot serve you today without a mask. And that person was in such denial about what we're going through that he said, well, I thought I lived in a free country. So there are people that are in denial about the seriousness of the pandemic. So with those people, be aware that the conversation may be very different with them if your starting point is they don't even think it's a problem. The next stage is bargaining. This is where people try to make sense of everything. Well, if we only wore masks sooner, we wouldn't have this problem. Or if only people just stayed home and never went outside, we wouldn't have this problem. If only we knew earlier, we wouldn't be where we are today. Now, the problem when you're in the bargaining stage is that there's no resolution or solution. You're still trying to figure out the unfigure-outable. And I know that's not even a word, I just made it up. But you can't figure out something that you can't figure out. And that's what happens in the bargaining stage. So for these people, if they're still trying to figure things out, why this happened, why are we in the position that we're in, with these people, move them towards, well, there's nothing we can do about where we are right now, but what we can do is this moving forward. The next stage is anger. Have you noticed in the last 2 months, people are showing anger in ways that you had never witnessed before. Maybe you're self-quarantining with some people in your family and you're just like, wow, they really snapped over something that seems so insignificant. This is normal. Anger is normal in any society, but what's not good is when you take your anger out inappropriately. So when you are experiencing this stage of anger, make sure you recognize that it's normal. Take a beat, take a breath, talk it out. Maybe take some time off, meaning like get away from a conversation so you can cool down. And if someone else is angry, you can talk about, well, sounds like you're pretty angry right now. Let's talk about this. And when you know that this is a stage and it's temporary, it's easier for you to communicate. It's normal. So this too, like anything else, shall pass. And then the next stage, the fourth stage, is depression. And this is where people have this heavy, heavy heart and they don't even know why. It's like things are so dark and it's like a heavy burden and they don't even have the energy to get up and do any work. Again, this is a normal phase of going through the loss of normalcy and the loss of routine. The best way to get out of this stage is to let somebody know. Find a trusted friend, someone who's got your back, someone you know will not judge you. And ask them, you know, what advice do you have? I'm just feeling really kind of low today, or I'm feeling kind of blue today. This will pass. And when you know about this stage as being one of the stages, it's easier for you to recognize, you know what, today's just going to be a day where I'm going to just take it easy and not have a whole lot of expectation, and certainly not any judgment that I'm feeling this way, because it's normal. And then the fifth stage is acceptance. And when you're at the stage of acceptance, you realize, okay, the world sort of was flipped on its axis. So we need to do things different. What can we do to have precaution? What can we do to reopen our stores? What can we do when we're faced with the public now? I know there was a question earlier when you're working in the public sector. What can we do now to make sure our public has the answers that they need, that they are calm, cool, and collected, that we cannot judge them? You know, let's be proactive. Let's talk about our next steps. Now, here's the most important part of these 5 stages. They're not linear. So don't be surprised if one day you have a moment of anger and then you go back to denial, like this really isn't happening. Or that you find yourself kind of blue, but then you go back to anger, but then you have some acceptance, but then one day you have another wave of bargaining. It's very, very natural. And if you understand that these are not linear, it's easier for you to empathize and to listen and really sort of see, okay, if I'm dealing with this employee or this partner, let's just find out, okay, what stage are we in right now? What can we do to move closer to acceptance? Now, how do you do that? How do you change your mindset? And how can you be positive and front row positive in a balcony negative world? Well, I have some suggestions for all of us. The first one is to show some grace. I just mentioned that the 5 stages of dealing with loss are not linear. So show some grace. Don't be so quick to judge someone, even starting with yourself. Show some grace, take a beat, take a breath, and take care of you so that you have the capacity to help those that you manage or support. Update your bucket list. There's nothing like getting your juices going and get your energy going by sitting back and thinking, okay, what are the things I want to accomplish in my life? What kind of person, now that we have a new future, what kind of person do I want to bring into this new future? What kind of behaviors and habits do I want to have so that I can be respected and appreciated by my team? So update your bucket list. I highly recommend it. Feed your brain with good news. John Krasinski on YouTube has an amazing show. I think it had an 8-week run once a week. Go to YouTube and simply type in John Krasinski, Some Good News. And it's one of those really fun, funny, real life stories of people doing really good things. And if you're feeling blue, if you're feeling down and you just need a pick-me-up, I suggest watching one of these episodes by John Krasinski. There's a great movie called Self-Made on Netflix. And there's a great podcast I highly recommend, Dr. Brene Brown. These are things that I do to keep my energy up, especially if I'm going for a long walk to keep my physical energy up. I'll listen to a great podcast or even make a phone call to a friend. Some other things I like to do is I love to listen to music, and every time I hear Prince, my energy just goes through the roof. So find the music that you really, really love and crank it. I also am a big fan of comedies and comedians and laughing. And my go-to are Johnny Carson reruns. I mean, you can just go to YouTube. YouTube is your friend during this time. Johnny Carson reruns just will make you laugh. Or find your favorite comedian and do a search on them and just start listening to their routines. Some other things that we can do is we can unfollow friends. If you are obsessed with Instagram or Facebook and you're seeing everybody's lives as if they look absolutely perfect, recognize that they're not. And every time their face comes up in a feed and you have a twinge in your gut that's like, oh man, and you have that comparison trap that comes up, why not unfollow them so you're not subjected to that feeling every time their face comes up on one of your feeds? Be news informed, but not news obsessed. Do not have the news going on in the background 24 hours a day, because news is typically just everything that's going wrong. And there's so much controversy that you just may feel anxiety just listening to it. So be informed, but don't be obsessed. Read great books. All of the speakers that Crestcom has highlighted during this summit, they all have great books. I highly recommend them. And collect stories of hope. I'm a firm believer that you will find what you're looking for. So look for stories of hope. And I'm going to stop sharing now, Jen, because I have one final story. So we can open it up for Q&A. And then I have a final story if you want to give me just one final minute at the end of our Q&A. Okay?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. Oh my gosh, Marilyn, thank you for like the motivational just energy boost that you gave us, especially even at the end of thinking about, being news informed, but not news obsessed, which I know is something that's easy for all of us to do. We do have some questions coming in and lots of accolades. And one of the questions, how do you deal with the lack of information or not having enough information when you're planning or trying to make business decisions during our current pandemic? How do you deal with that while trying to stay in the front row?
A very good question. And I want everybody to write this down because this will be so helpful in having these conversations. And the phrase is, it's 3 words, help me understand. Because usually if you're not informed, there's more to it than that. It's like you need to know what our priority is moving forward. So instead of saying what's our priority moving forward, you would say, help me understand, if we're going to go in this direction, what will this mean for A, B, and C? So you ask these open-ended questions instead of yes or no questions. And help me understand is a really good phrase to use when you're having those conversations, because you're not questioning authority. You're really trying to understand. And it's really important in your tone of voice and your body language, because if you have this tone of voice is like, well, help me understand why we have to do it this way. Instead of coming from a place of inquiry, I'm asking a question to gather information. So help me understand. Even if you're confused about something, you don't have to say, I'm totally confused. You can say, help me understand what you mean, because this is my interpretation and I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Awesome. Another question. What would you say to someone that maybe is in the balcony looking down, maybe they're critical, but maybe in their head they want to do it, but they're not yet ready to go down the stairs and jump into that front row seat. What would you say to someone that might feel stuck? Like, how would you move them forward?
I think I would look at what are the things that are keeping them stuck. And the number one answer to that is fear. So many people have fear of the front row, fear of moving even from the balcony to the general admission. I had an attendee of one of my events say, I'm not even in the parking lot of the venue outside of the balcony. That's how far back she was. People get very comfortable in their situation, even if it's bad. They would rather stay in a balcony seat than move into the unknown of general admission or the front row. So my advice to them would be, look at what is holding you back. Is it fear? Is it fear of success, fear of rejection, fear of what other people are going to think about you? And all of those fears do not serve you. So you acknowledge that, okay, I have fear, but I'm going to get through it anyway. And it is the number one thing that holds people back into the balcony of their life. So give yourself a break, and congratulations for acknowledging it, but then patch up that hole that's in your bucket list with courage, compassion, and kindness. Those are my three things that help patch up my holes in my bucket list.
Oh, yeah, we have to be nicer to ourselves and
Yes.
also learn how to make decisions from that place of possibility
Yes.
instead of that place of fear.
Yeah.
Another question that came in is, typically when you talk about a bucket list, it's something that's attached to our personal dreams. How do you apply it to your professional side of life?
Oh, there are absolutely zero rules when it comes to your bucket list. Whatever you decide you want to do for your life, you can have that and call it a bucket list. You can have a bucket list of your, I call it goal setting on steroids. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, because I had so many failures. It's like, you know what? Why do I keep putting holes in my own bucket list? And so then I did a deep dive on goal setting, and I have a place where you can actually write a bucket list for your work, write a bucket list for your travel, write a bucket list for your family. So as it applies to work, just ask yourself, what would I look like if I was my ideal self? What kind of manager do I want to be? What kind of leader do I want to be? And then write down all of those things. And now that is your bucket list. So there are no rules. You can absolutely apply this to your work.
I love that. And especially being curious, or the question that you asked, what would it look like? So maybe if you're in the balcony and you're looking down at the front row, what would it look like for me to be in the front row, and making that your bucket list?
Yeah.
And I like that you're unleashing possibilities for people. It doesn't have to, it can be anything. Think about your life, what you want to create, and go there.
Right.
Personal question from Sandra is, what is your routine in the morning to kickstart your day and keep you motivated? We want people to get up and get energized. What do you do?
Well, when I get up in the morning, I have to drink a lot of water because I live in the desert of Las Vegas, and I know I've got to stay hydrated. So I drink a lot of water. I also have a good, healthy breakfast. And then I go in and I start to go through the things on my to-do list, not my to-don't list, the things that I want to accomplish. And here's something that I've done the last 2 months with quarantine. Every single day for the last 44 days, I've logged into Duolingo app on my phone because I want to learn how to speak French. Oui, bien sûr, absolument. And so every single day that it tells me, okay, you've accomplished your certain level of the day to keep your streak alive, that makes me feel really good and really energized. So find something in your life that you can cross off your to-do list, that you can track it. I also make sure I get up and do some sort of physical activity. And it's such a beautiful time in Las Vegas right now. I can see the mountains and the blue sky right now, and it's not really hot yet. So I love to go outside and look at the flowers and take a walk. So those are some of the things I do every day.
Yeah, slow down and just take it all in.
Yes.
Marilyn, you've been so inspiring. So many thoughts have come in, and even even responses in French, which I can't read, but we are so happy to learn about the Seat for Success. But we want to give you time to be able to share your closing story.
Great. Well, the last thing I want to say is the best seat in the house is really to be an usher. So if you think of serving others, if you ever come to Vegas, and I hope you do, and if you ever go to see a show, and I hope you do, there will be an usher with two things. Number one, they will have knowledge of all the seats in the house. And number two, they will have a flashlight. And they will look at your ticket and they will say, follow me. And they will lead you to the most direct path to your seat. I don't want you to think that a front row seat is all about you, because the best seat in the house is when you are living your best life, you are illuminating from within, because you feel really good about who you are and where you are in the world. And because of your light of who you are, the energy of who you are illuminating the path for other people. So it's not about you being in the front row. It's about you being the best version of you, so other people are inspired to be the best version of them. So you can illuminate the path to the front row just by being the best version of you. And that is front row leadership.
Nice job, Marilyn. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I really just appreciate that tip. Like, Seat for Success, front row leadership. Get off the dang balcony if you're there. And I'm sure many of you this might be your first kind of imprint of leadership. Maybe you've been dabbling in it, but I hope that what you gave for the newbies on the line, that you realize that you can achieve anything. We're talking about executing results. And Marilyn, you just gave them the tips for what they can do as individuals to be successful. It just starts with your choices of getting off the balcony.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
You are welcome. And next up, we have Mark Sanborn. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Mark Sanborn, he's on the screen, so I'm going to leave it there. But some of you may not know that he was awarded and listed as one of the top motivational speakers in the world. What? That is an insane accolade. He is also a New York Times bestselling author, as well as Wall Street Journal, and he is just an inspiring keynote speaker. And Mark is here, and he is going to help us understand how we can navigate this new normal, what we need to do going forward to be the leaders that we want to be, to lead our organizations to where they want to be. Mark, I'm going to go ahead and just turn it right over to you, because they don't want to hear from me. We want to take advantage of our time with you. So Mark, thank you so much for joining Crestcom today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jen. Thank you. And thanks to everyone who's on the line, nearly 800 people. And I think it would be fun, and maybe you've done this before, it would be fun to just type into the chat box where you're listening and watching from, just to kind of give me a flavor of the dispersion of Crestcom leaders all over the world today. Wow, screening up quickly. I need to have super fast vision to see that. But just as I expected, the 90 countries that Crestcom is taught in, I've been so grateful to be a part of the faculty. And in my introduction, I always say that the ideas that I've shared with Crestcom teaches in those countries, and that's very gratifying to me. So thank you all very much for your support. Great to be with you today from my conference center here in Lone Tree, Colorado. I'm going to share the screen now so that I can give you some slides to go with my presentation. I'm going to be talking about leading in the new abnormal. First of all, don't manage your way out of a crisis. You lead your way out of a crisis. People trying to manage their way out are in trouble. You need very strong leadership all the time, but especially in times of crisis. I've asked a number of clients. I've probably done 24 webinars and audio presentations over the last 2 to 3 months. And I keep asking people, when do you think things will be back to normal? Some people say 2 months, some say 4 to 6, some say 6 to a year. I say never. Things will never be back to normal. And I'll tell you why I say that. If you think you know what's normal, you stop paying attention. We thought life without a pandemic was normal. And of course, 100 years ago, we have historical proof that it wasn't normal. And when you get flat-footed and you're not vigilant, and you're not paying attention, crisis really takes you out. And that's why I like to use it as a and I define it like this: whatever happens is normal. And leaders need to remember that. Now, you may know Nassim Taleb, who wrote a book called The Black Swan. A black swan is an anomaly in nature, very rare. And he said that black swan events in global marketplace, in global geopolitics, were very hard to predict and very hard to prepare for. I don't think COVID-19 has been a black swan. It was on our horizon. It was on our radar. There were a number of people trying to alert us to that possibility. What I think has been the black swan is how we've responded, because nobody could predict that for the first time in history, we would quarantine healthy people, not sick people. No one can predict now what customers and what colleagues and what employees and what vendors are going to want going forward. So that means in times of great uncertainty, plan and process are out the window. And what really counts is experimentation and agility. That's how you deal with these unpredictable events that I've just talked about. A lot of people think in business, you've got to be proactive. You're business owners, business leaders, you love to be proactive. Guess what? We were just given proof that we're only proactive at a very small, very local, very personal level. We know that being reactive is kind of the kiss of death, because that means you're only responding to what happens and you've got to play catch up. What I want you to think about going forward is to be a surfer, because a surfer is successful when he or she is interactive. See, only Mother Nature can make a wave. The surfer doesn't make the wave. The surfer takes the condition Mother Nature has given him or her and interacts with it in such a way to create the outcome he or she desires. And that's really what leadership is. It's about being agile and experimenting and interacting with the forces that we don't control to still create the outcomes we desire for us, for our team, and for our employees. I'm going to give you 4 ideas today before I open it up for questions and answers. And they're going to seem very simple, but in their simplicity, they're very powerful. And it's interesting. I heard Simon and Marilyn, both friends of mine for many years in this profession, and the ideas that they've shared. And I think you're going to find that all 3 of us are going to complement each other in some of the challenges that we're giving you. 2 questions that you need to ask during a time of crisis. Most leaders only ask 1. The question everybody is preoccupied with right now is, what's important now? What's changed? What's different? What needs to be different going forward? Let me point out to you, there are just as many, if not more, things that haven't changed. Things like relationships and customer service and leadership and communication and effective operations. So the 2 questions you need to balance as a leader is what's changed, what's important now, but you need to build on a foundation of what's always mattered. Now, this is a sculpture known to many of you. We popularly call it the thinker. Rodin called it the poet. But I guess he was a good marketer. He figured if people want to call it the thinker, I don't care what they call it as long as they look at it. And most people think that the thinker is a sculpture that's telling us how important it is to think. You know, it'd be pretty lame to create a masterpiece like that with such an obvious message. I'm going to try to illustrate for you what Rodin was trying to teach us. Wherever you're at, I want you to put both feet flat on the floor. You're going to assume the position of Rodin's thinker. You're going to take your right hand, cock it at the wrist, place your wrist under your chin. Then take that right elbow and place it at the end of your left knee. The end of your left knee. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. It's difficult. For some people, they can't do it. And that's exactly what Rodin was saying. He originally called this sculpture the poet because it was supposed to be about Dante. And he believed what made Dante a poet was his willingness to think harder and deeper and longer and become more uncomfortable with thinking than normal people. I call it Rodin think. First thought is when you take the easy answer. Second thought is when you improve on it. But it's not until you really dig deep and you become uncomfortable that you assume the position of the thinker. And if you ever get a chance to see the sculpture, the veins on the neck, the muscles, the sinew, it's all standing out, signifying intense concentration. You see, what's going to make you better going forward is resistance. A friend of mine once said, you know why I hire a personal trainer? Because I need someone to create resistance for me. And without resistance, my muscles won't grow. And the same is true with leadership. Without resistance, you will not grow as a leader. Without resistance, your organization will not grow. Now, we didn't sign up for all the resistance that we're experiencing right now, but since we didn't have that choice, let's use that resistance to make us stronger, longer and harder about how not just to survive, but how to thrive. Number two, you got to practice discipline. By the way, that sounds really easy, but it's not. Discipline is the ability to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. If you can do it and you want to do it and it's easy to do it, that takes no discipline. My brother is both a restaurant broker and an operator, and he can still remember standing in front of his staff and saying that as of today, you are all unemployed. You will all have a job when we reopen, but I don't know when that will be. You probably need to apply for unemployment. That's hard. Being honest and being honest quickly and not fudging it and giving people false hope, that's hard, but that's the work of leadership. And I would suggest to you that if it's not hard, you're probably just managing rather than leading. And what you all need, and I know during the course of these webinars, you've said, how do we engage people? How do we engage people remotely? Everybody, especially the leader, needs what I call a disciplined day. Someone, I think it was Sandra, asked Marilyn, how do you begin your day? I'm going to show you how I try to structure every day, and I've been trying to do it throughout COVID-19. Number one, you got to get your rest. Rest and routine are coming up together. Here in the United States, about 70% of Americans were sleep deprived before COVID-19, and I hope they caught up. Because being sleep deprived can create the same dilemma as being intoxicated. You don't think clearly, you don't have energy, and you make bad decisions. Take advantage of this opportunity for increased rest. And then when you get up, have a routine. And like Marilyn, my routine is very simple. I begin by doing my email first thing in the morning so that my day is clear ahead of me. I exercise 6 days out of 7 because I find it's hard to live a high performance life in a low performance body. And then I also do some meditation and prayer because I'm a person of faith. After my routine, which includes eating healthy, having a breakfast that is healthy to set the stage for the day, I then tackle problems. Here's why people have been disengaged during COVID-19. They've lacked projects. They haven't known what to do, and they lack accomplishment, which makes them lethargic. So the first thing is give people challenges. Say, here's a problem. Prioritize, so you're always attacking your biggest problem first and not confusing activity with accomplishment. Then come up with a positive project, whether it's related to work or something around your office or your home. I reorganized my home for the first time in my entire life. I now know where everything I own is located, and that's no small feat. Number 5, attend to relationships. How many times have you heard people say, well, we didn't really have time to stay in touch, or I'm out of touch, but I don't have time to reestablish contact? You've got it now with customers or with colleagues, with people who you appreciate but haven't spoken to. Don't lose the opportunity to enrich relationships and increase the connectivity that Simon talked about. Number 6 is rejuvenation. My clients right now are facing something called decision fatigue. Because they're mostly working remotely and just returning to their offices, there's no off button. As soon as they get up, their phone is on, they get a text or an email or a phone call, and it happens late into the evening. You need to rest and rejuvenate, or you will eventually burn out. You need to make time to do that as part of your disciplined day. And then number 7, when the sun comes up tomorrow and the alarm clock goes off, you repeat. Number 3, Shep Hyken began this event, and others talked about customer service. I want to get larger than customer service for your businesses and for your clients and customers' businesses. We have to rethink value because it is radically different going forward. Now, people have asked me, what are customers going to want in the future? And I can tell you with specificity, that too, I can tell you exactly what customers are going to want going forward. It's the same thing they always wanted going backwards before COVID-19. They want to be more successful. They want to have better lives, be safer, healthier, more secure, and enjoy more financial and physical success. How can you help them do that? Now, even though that's what they want, the means becomes difficult. Now, my friends Pine and Gilmore wrote a great book, and if you haven't read it, I recommend it. It's called The Experience Economy, one of my favorite books of all time. They said it wasn't the products and the services, but the overall experience that created success for a business. All due respect to my buddies, I think we're in a new plane, a new level, and I call it the emotion economy. The emotion economy looks at how people feel about doing business with you. Are they happier they chose Crestcom than a competitor? Are they happier they chose your restaurant than another restaurant? Are they happier they went to your university than another? And to do that, that means you've got to look at the experience, but design and deliver positive emotion, not just experience. Have you ever had a good experience, but you were still unhappy? Maybe you went to a restaurant in the old days, food was great, service was bad. Overall, a pretty good experience, but you weren't happy. The million-dollar question: are your customers happier they did business with you than with somebody else? And I can tell you, by the way, right now at the top of the happiness and success meter is safety and security. We're going to have to find ways to deliver our products and services so that people feel absolutely confident that they're not risking their life and well-being to do business with us. Number 4, be courageous. You can't be a leader without being courageous. If you're not willing to be disciplined and do the tough things, you will not effectively lead people out of the crisis and into the future. So what is your job number 1? This is another question that it's often asked, and I find the answer is obvious, but people push back against it because intuitively it doesn't ring true. Your number 1 job is taking care of yourself as a leader. Because if you aren't healthy, if you don't have a positive attitude, if you aren't mentally alert and engaged, then how do you expect to be able to help your people be all those things? This isn't selfish. This is practical. You may have to sacrifice more. You may have to work harder. You may have to make tougher decisions. But the way you do that is by staying healthy and creating a larger bandwidth with which you can learn in this time of crisis. I've learned more probably in the last 3 months than I have in the last 10 years because I took advantage of the opportunity for enrichment that was limited by the things that I was typically doing, which for me meant getting on and off an airplane. So how do you engage people, remotely or in person? Engage them with PI. Now I know PI is an acronym and sometimes people push back against acronyms, but they're a great way to remember things. 3 things right now for leading people into and through the new abnormal. You've got to remind them of their purpose because people get tactical. I live here in Denver, Colorado. I used to drive to my office, which was due west. That meant the mountains were in front of me every day. And it dawned on me, I rarely looked at the mountains. I only looked at the road. Now, looking at the road made me a safe driver, but I just forgot to elevate my sight a little bit. I moved here for the mountains, and yet I become so caught up in the day-to-day routine that I kind of missed the greater purpose. Maybe that purpose is personal, but what is the purpose of your organization? Because right now you're going to have to find what your core skills were and ask yourself, how can we reapply them in this new context and monetize them? So purpose is key. The next is share ideas. Again, I've gotten so many good ideas because I've had friends that have shared theirs and I've been able to return the favor. Right now, share ideas with the other people in your networks. What's working? What's not working? What's the best book or article you've read? What's the worst decision you made? In other words, ask people to share their insights. But remember that this third ingredient may be the most important and the easiest to do, and that is to encourage people. Just sometimes people need you can do it. You've done it before. You can do it again, because they're sad or they're depressed. We all go through those emotions as we come to terms with this new reality. What are you doing to encourage the people that you lead? So if you want to engage anyone, you can engage them and be of greater service by doing those 3 things. Finally, here's how you lead courageously. First, you walk the talk. Everybody has got to walk the talk, but leaders got to take the first steps. People will pick up on your attitude, mirror neurons on the brain, and the brains of those that you lead. They'll pick up if you're not really committed, if you're just going through the motion. So begin all of your efforts in the new abnormal of being the first to walk the talk. And then communicate. And I'm so disappointed by the bad advice that has been so rampant during COVID-19. You've got to over-communicate. No, don't. Because if you over-communicate, people won't open your emails, they won't listen to your messages, they won't take you seriously. You don't have to over communicate, but you've got to communicate better. You have to give people a reason to listen by respecting their time so that they know when they get an email or when they get a phone call from you, it's important and they need to pay attention. So don't over communicate. Communicate better by being clear and concise. The third is empathy. Show concern, because different people struggle differently. We're all real empathetic to ourselves, but sometimes we look at the people on our team as kind of transactional rather than relational. So check in with people, find out how they're doing. And finally, you better be very clear on what the consequences of change or lack thereof are. And the consequences are great. See, if you ask anybody on your team as a leader to do something and you don't give them a compelling reason and consequence to do it, they won't. In other words, without consequences, we kind of default to our natural status quo lazy mode and figure, well, if nothing bad or good happens if I do it, why do it at all? So exemplary communication, empathy, and the ability to sell the changes that are needed because of the consequences that are associated with them. Those are the 4 ways that you lead courageously. Now, before we go to Q&A, let me be very clear, call to action. Just 4 simple things I'd like you to do going forward. Number 1 is think better, think harder, think more deeply. Number 2, discipline yourself. Do what needs to be done, whether or not you feel like it. Rethink value. How are you going to design and deliver for emotion rather than just experience? And finally, number 4, be courageous. Now, Jen, as Marilyn did, have about 2 minutes that I want to end on, but let's open it up for questions in the interim. I'll let you throw the questions my way, and then I'll wrap up 2 minutes before my time is up.
First of all, you gave us so much content. I love the disciplined day, and even just the reminder that we need to really think better, that we need to change the way that we're thinking so we can execute differently and get different results. So we've got a lot of great questions coming in. So one of the questions that is more pertinent to maybe today and what we're seeing is, how would you recommend motivating people in a remote world? How does that change?
You know, I released my last book just before COVID, and one of the things I was curious about is if the intention imperative would stand the test of time. You know, if you open a restaurant right before COVID-19, you kind of wonder what your restaurant's going to be like afterwards. And so I went back and revisited what was in the book and found that the 3 primary imperatives are absolutely as relevant now as they were before. And one of those imperatives is to go from motivation to inspiration. See, motivation is carrot and stick, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're motivated by what we get paid, our working conditions, our benefits. But it's not enough, because 87% of millennials say they would rather do work that matters, work that is important, than be recognized by their employer. That's a big deal, because it says doing purposeful work, meaningful work, matters to them as much or more than recognition. So I think the real question is, whether it's remote or in person, how do we inspire people? And I'll give you my definition from the book. Inspiration is motivation to the power of purpose. You take the carrot and the stick, which is personal, but then you make it higher level calling. You talk about how it serves a greater good, a greater community. And that's how you get people to stay not just motivated, but to stay inspired. You couple purpose, motivation to the power of purpose.
Awesome. Okay, we got another question coming in. One of the things you said is that we have to avoid that over communication. And so the question that came in is, how do you balance over communication, but keeping people informed?
Well, you need to think of communication in 2 ways, push and pull. Push information is the most important information people need. Pull information is how they stay informed. So you set up the equivalent of a Facebook page, metaphorically, if not literally, where your customers can go for updates and where your employees can go for updates, because that gives them the option of choosing when and how long they stay. That doesn't mean you don't quit sending information. It's just that the push information becomes more important. I've been amazed at how many websites have been totally unupdated since the beginning of COVID-19. And if you go to that website, and when you go to someone's website, that means you're committed to them in some way. You're part of their their cult to the customer, then you want to be able to find information without having to work very hard. So I would combine push and pull information. Keep people informed with a central repository, whether it's a website or a social media site, but the really important information, and let people know this. If you hear from me, it is must-need information, not just good to know.
Ooh, that was great. I love that. They've got so many great questions for you, Mark. I'm so sorry that I'm going to keep pushing these through. How do you help structure employees who are unorganized without coming across as the micromanager, which I know is difficult for many when they feel like they're micromanaged, they want to run. How do you balance, or how do you help structure those employees without coming across as a micromanager?
Well, maybe this will help. First of all, organization is a skill set, and it's a skill set that you can require when you employ somebody. You don't have to require certain styles. They may not be as neat and tidy, but a lack of organization is an impediment to them doing their job. So let them know that once you're organized, you'll see a lot less of me, but until you have that foundation, I can't just turn you loose because it takes too long for you to retrieve information, process information, share information. So I would look at organization as a skill training opportunity rather than micromanaging. Micromanaging is after somebody has the skills, but you don't trust them to do it the way you want it done.
Oh, that's a great clarification. Okay, I've got another one that I think probably a lot of people are experiencing. What do you do if someone in your organization, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a colleague, is just overreacting to the situation? Meaning they described it as they're in fire extinguishing mode. They're so focused on putting out fires and they're operating so fast that it's hard to keep up, or maybe it's stressful. What do you do, and how do you manage yourself when you're working with someone like that?
Ultimately, you can't really make anybody do anything. You know, I'm often asked that. You know, I wrote a book called The Fred Factor about this extraordinary postal carrier. And people would say, Mark, can you make an employee who isn't that way be like Fred? And I'd say, I had teenage sons. I couldn't take out the garbage on a regular basis. Ultimately, making anybody do anything is very hard work and it's a waste of time. What you can do, however, is rather than making them do it, you can change how you respond to them. Typically, people that are in fire extinguisher mode feed off fire. And if you get upset, then you've added fuel to their fire. The first and most effective thing you can do, and it isn't a panacea, it's not a cure-all, is to stay calm and measured and to communicate with them in a measured and calm way, regardless of how they're coming across to you. The second thing you can do, which is a bit more pragmatic, and that is say, you know what, you're worried about a lot of things. I get that. I'm worried about a lot of things too. Let's pick the biggest 2 or 3 problems and prioritize them, because they stay out of focus by pursuing too many things. And if you can narrow it down to 2 or 3 things at a time, as you make progress on those 2 or 3, then you can add other things to the list.
Awesome.
Could you know, unless there's someone that is, I'm sorry, that's good. I'll stop there.
No. I'm sorry. I cut out a little bit. No, someone is so sorry to cut you off on that one. Someone had asked if you could please repeat the 7 steps of discipline.
Oh, the discipline day. All right. It begins with rest. Then it goes to reset, how you start your day. Then you look at problems, the biggest problems prioritized. Next, you look at projects. Those are things that need to be done and that add value. Number 6 is you have to rejuvenate, recreate, take some time that is not work-related, especially if you're working remotely. And the 7th is repeat.
Awesome.
And I'll make this slide deck available as well, so they'll have that to refer to later.
Oh, great. That is a question. I've got another one. First of all, they said Mark Sanborn is a legend. So that's great positive feedback. The question from Mark Jones is, lots of companies deliver great customer service as stated or as a stated value, but fall short on consistently delivering it. What is the top tip on bridging that gap and actually doing it?
Well, I'm assuming that might be the Mark Jones of Orlando, Florida. Very, very famous Mark Jones, but we don't have time to find out or confirm or deny. You know, I always say it's better to be consistently good than occasionally great. You have to set your sights on the level you can consistently deliver, because if you're occasionally great and somebody catches you on a great day and then they come back and catch you on a typical good day, they're going to be disappointed. People's expectations are set by, and that's what, by the way, customer means originally in the Old English, to become accustomed to. We become a customer because we can predict what our experience, what the outcome is going to be like. So I think the number one tip is to don't overreach. Now, customers understand when you occasionally and happily over-deliver. That's fine. But the key is to look for consistent delivery of those positive emotions and experience that you can deliver day in and day out.
Awesome. What would you recommend leaders do for rewards and recognition during this current time frame? Do you think there's changes to how we need to recognize our staff? What do you think?
Well, I always take rewards and recognition, rewards being tangible, recognition being intangible. Recognition is a thank you, an appreciation note, a pat on the back, talking somebody up in front of their boss. A reward is, in the way I look at it, giving them tickets to a movie theater or a book to read or something tangible. And I would say that it hasn't changed. The basics of this is one of those things that never changes. People want to be recognized and rewarded. And we did a bad job of it historically before COVID-19. So again, with the extra time that we have, when you work on those relationships, make sure that you are recognizing people's contributions. A lot of people right now don't have excess cash to reward people with. You know, cash is king. That capital preservation is at the top of the list for most business leaders today. But that doesn't mean you can't offer plenty of recognition. And when things are better, here's the key thing. Don't forget to reward people for the sacrifice. Can't tell you how many times I've seen an organization go through a tough time and ask their employees to sacrifice, and then things got better, but the employees were never rewarded for their sacrifice. If you're going to ask people to sacrifice later as you can, you better reward them. Jen, I'm going to go to my close because I know we're running out of time here.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if my screen share is still, there we go. This is Jean-Dominique Barbet. Jean-Dominique Barbet was the editor of the French fashion magazine Elle, E-L-L-E. Some of you are very familiar with it. He was at the top of his game. He went to all the greatest parties and ate at the greatest restaurants and knew famous supermodels and famous people. But in December of 1995, as he was driving his three children to an event, he began to have a loss of vision. His vision constricted. He pulled the car over luckily and stopped and awoke many days later at Berck-sur-Mer, which is a hospital in France. You see, he had suffered a massive stroke, and he was now a victim of something that we've heard about more since than we had before. It was called locked-in syndrome. Locked-in syndrome leaves a fully functioning person totally immobilized and paralyzed in his body. The only thing that Jean Barbet could do was open and close his eyes. Now, his right eye actually stayed open too much. They had to sew it shut to keep it from becoming septic. So he had the ability to interact with the world only by opening and closing his left eye. And he wrote a book about his experience. Some of you have read the book, and if you haven't, I highly recommend it. Many of you might have even seen the movie, but the book and the movie were both called The Diving Bell and The Butterfly. And Jean-Dominique Barbet talked about what it was like to be fully conscious inside a totally paralyzed body. You say, well, how did you write the book? Well, you already know the answer. I told you. He blinked his left eye. You see, they took the letters of the alphabet most frequently used in French. I believe it's E-R-S-A would be the first four. One blink got an E, two got an S, three got an R. And he took an average of 2 minutes to blink out a word and 10 months to write the book. Jean-Dominique Barbet passed 2 days after the book was published. He never got better. He was in physical therapy, but never regained control of his body. In the book, he talks about all the times he'd eaten at nice restaurants and how he hadn't given it a second thought, but now he was being fed with a tube. And so he went back and re-ate, re-dined at those restaurants, and he savored every course and tried to remember as much as he could about the ingredients. He said he always wanted to direct movies, but never had time. So he became a movie director in his mind. Not only did he direct his own movies and write his own his own scripts, but he went back and reshot some of the scenes from other movies that he thought could have been done better. Couldn't embrace a loved one. Loved ones could embrace him, but he could not return the embrace. And so he said he had to go deep inside his memory and consciousness to feel the warmth of a human embrace. He talks a little bit about his faith. He's very philosophical. But let me share with you what I took away from the book, should you read it or not. The big message of the book, which is so pertinent to where we're at right now in 2020, is this. He said he hoped that no one ever had the same tragedy befall them that befell him. He wished that on not even his worst enemy. But he went on to say that in many ways his life was as rich and full, if not fuller, having suffered from locked-in syndrome. You see, his message is this: as long as we are conscious, as long as the human brain is functioning, even limited by our ability to interact with the world around us, if we have our consciousness, we have everything we need for a rich, a rewarding, a fulfilling, and a meaningful life. And that's the message of leading through the new abnormal. Thanks, Jen. Thank you, Crest. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Oh my gosh, Mark, that was so inspiring. Even the chats coming in, people, I think you've really just helped them see that we can do this new path forward. We can reimagine our tomorrow. Mark, that was such a beautiful closing story. Thank you so much for sharing. Again, just so many great insights, from understanding the disciplined day to just really thinking about thinking better, disciplining ourselves, rethinking the value, and being courageous. You were so inspiring. It's just a perfect close, because it was a great reminder that we can go out and we can handle this. We just have to believe in ourselves, be more courageous, and think differently. Thank you so much, Mark.
My pleasure. All the best.
So in closing, wow, how many amazing speakers did we hear from? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just quickly remind you that should you want to get in touch with Mark, you can find him at marksanborn.com, and you can also pick up his new book on Amazon as well as on Barnes & Noble, The Intention Imperative, which is a great book to think about our new path forward. But let's reflect on what we have maybe talked about over the past few days. We've talked about innovation, wanting to think differently by asking the right questions. We've talked about how even right now, it's still important to be thinking about what we can do to attract the top talent as well as retain them. We've talked about the value that we want to create for our customers. We've also talked about our emotional intelligence, how we can influence people. Today, we have talked today and yesterday, we've also talked about love, just being human and showing up. And today, especially, if we think about what we heard from Simon and Marilyn and Mark, Simon began with talking about how we need to be human, we need to show up, and that serving is the new selling. And Marilyn talked about our need to jump from the balcony and go upstairs and go to the front row to create that seat for success for ourselves. And then Mark talked about so much about pie. He talked about the discipline day. These are all just reminders. And in closing, we just want to say thank you so much on behalf of Crestcom for joining us throughout this last 3 days. It's something that we've taken a lot of pride in being able to share this content with you. We want to develop these leaders as Crestcom so we can make the world a greater place. Just a reminder, for some of the individuals, if you've taken Crestcom, you can still come back and you can have different opportunities to develop or enhance or even freshen up that leadership toolkit by pursuing our alumni continuing education. You can contact your local Crestcom representative. And also, if you've liked what you've learned, please come back and join us on June 4th for our CEO's top 3 priorities, or understanding how you could show up differently in the stage of crisis to be more resilient. That's June 4th, 2020. And we do different topics each month. So please stay connected with us. And if you're new, for some of you, new to Crestcom, our program is 12 months long. We cover 24 different topics to support the 12 fundamental skills that CEOs expect from their leaders. So you can see them on the screen: communication, customer focus. These are many of the things that we addressed so far. And last, subscribe to our podcast. Stay connected. We talk to so many just brilliant minds within the leadership space over a variety of topics. And we try to release new episodes weekly. So you can find us on your favorite podcast streaming service. And thank you so much just for your engagement, for taking the time to develop yourself, because that's what we as Crestcom want for you. We want you to develop yourself so you can have that impact on your team and on your organization. And just as a reminder that we hope to leave you with being inspired, that by participating in these last 3 events, that you feel empowered to be able to reimagine your tomorrow, because the time is now. We know that we're all operating in a place of uncertainty, but people are going to be looking at you as leaders to guide them through this, to help them understand what their tomorrow is going to look like. And just that reminder that you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. And the ending story that I'm going to leave you with for our series today is this. A young woman struggling with her life went to her mother and told her how miserable she was and how hard her life was. She was tired of fighting and struggling with her problems, and she just wanted to give up. Her mother, without saying much, took the young lady to the kitchen, and she filled 3 pots with water. In the first pot, she placed carrots, and the second, eggs. And then the third and final pot was ground coffee. She let them sit and come to a boil without saying a word to her daughter. The daughter wondered what her mother was trying to do while she was complaining about her life. And after some time, the mother turned down the burner and she took the carrots and the eggs and she put them into a bowl. And she took the coffee grounds and poured them into a cup. And she turned to her daughter and asked, "Dear, tell me what you see." And the daughter replied, "Well, a carrot, egg, and coffee." "Look closer," her mother said, "and feel the carrots." The daughter noted that they were soft. The mother then asked her to take the egg and break it. And when the daughter did, she noticed that the interior of the egg was hard-boiled. And finally, she asked her daughter to take a sip of the coffee, and its rich aroma brought a smile to her face. She said, "Look closer, dear. Feel the carrots. What does this," and then the daughter said, "What does this mean, mother?" All 3 of the items, the carrot, the egg, and the coffee, all went through the same situation. They were all impacted by the boiling water. However, even though they had the same situation, each of them responded differently. The carrot was hard, but then when it faced the water, the boiling water became soft. Whereas the egg was delicate. You could break it easily, but after the hard boiling water, it became hard on the inside. The ground coffee beans were unique that as they came into the water, they changed the water and gave it an incredible aroma. So she asked her daughter, "Who are you? How do you respond in difficult situations? Are you a carrot? Are you an egg? Or are you a coffee bean? Are you a carrot that seems strong at first, but becomes soft and loses its strength in adversity? Are you an egg that starts with a malleable heart, but hardens with the heat? And did you once have a fluid spirit, but as you've struggled, you've become stiff? Or are you like the coffee beans, the beans that change the hot water, the adversity, the hot water that changed that coffee or the hot water into an aromatic drink? If you are like the coffee beans, when things are at their worst, you will get better and change the situation around you. When the hours are the darkest and trials are the greatest, how are you going to elevate to the next level? That is what we are asking of you. Consider, do you be like a flower, survive the rain, but use it to grow? We can't change the fact that this pandemic occurred, but we can change how we set ourselves up and how we reimagine our tomorrow. It has been such a joy to spend time with every one of you. And I hope that you have left feeling empowered that this new normal is going to be something great. We have the power to achieve it. Thank you so much for connecting with us today. And please connect with Crestcom. We want to make the world a better place through leadership. And we can do that. We can support you and let us know how we can help. But again, just remember, be like a flower, survive the rain, and use it to grow. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. It was so great to spend time with you. I hope that you have a lovely rest of your week and stay connected with us. We love supporting our community and just helping leaders grow. I'll leave on for a few. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Again, just a reminder, these are all going to be recorded and they'll be sent to you. And we are also going to have the PowerPoints from the slides that the speakers presented. Those will also be sent to you. There's going to be resources so you can get in touch and connect with our speakers, have access to their websites, understand or learn what books they've written so you can start to develop yourself. I hope that you really enjoyed today. I'm going to sign off now, but thank you so much for connecting with us. And just remember that to be the change you wish to see in the world. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.